Is that working any better for more people? Hmm. Okay, well, it's working for some people now. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and push along here, and we'll see what we can do. If that's okay with everybody. I know there's some issues with a potential recording. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so yeah, so what we're gonna do here, before we get started, is everyone pretty familiar with what SSRF is? Just in case you're not, basically what you're doing is tricking the server into making a request for you, which can turn into all sorts of things. I know I saw somebody mention RCE or remote code execution earlier. You can, of course, access internal resources and do all sorts of things. Essentially, you're acting as the computer making network requests. And so what we do here in the lab, lab has stock check feature, which features okay. So we're going to need to use SSRF. So that's our hint. They have a solution down here in case we get stuck, but we need SSRF to solve this lab. We'll go to click here to access the lab, and then we'll need to get into admin or act as the admin, and then log in as Carlos. Okay, so we've got the lab spun up. So let's go ahead and get Burp Suite started because we'll need to get that going as well to actually analyze the web traffic. Now, for everyone who the stream is working for, do we all have Burp Suite set up or know how to set it up? Okay, yep, sure. So yeah, so we have it pulled up here. It does come default installed on Kali, so you'll have it as soon as you get Kali pulled up, which is what I'm using here. And so what you want to do first is, or once you get it pulled up, I don't know if I want to say first, but you're going to get a plugin called Foxy Proxy, in which you can kind of on the fly, you don't have to go into the actual settings for the browser to change your proxy. And so you go to options, I think it's options. Yeah, and then proxies, and then hit add, which I've already set mine up, but you'll want these configurations. It's going to be on port 8080 and on the hostname localhost or 127.0.0.1. Just pointing at the loopback interface. But yeah, and then you're going port 80, which is important. So once you have that set up, you go to the actual plugin and click on it. And so now you go here to proxy and then hit refresh. If everything's set up correctly, sometimes my burp does weird things. But it worked. If we go to HTTP history, we can see that it actually intercepted the request. And we can look at like the actual data that was sent and actually analyze the traffic or do deep packet inspection. Does that count as deep packet inspection? Kind of. Okay. So, so we've already got the lab pulled up, and we know we need to access the admin account or act as the admin account to get. Um, I hope so. Is somebody recording? I wonder if there's something on my side that it's not broadcasting it. I wonder if it's like my internet connection or something. You know what? I am using the browser Discord. I bet that plays into it. Okay. Yeah, I'll just keep chugging then. Okay. Okay, yeah, so what we're gonna do here, we need to get when you're analyzing any sort of web application, you want to get a really good feel for how it's supposed to work. And then based off that, you can kind of look and see how you can break it, and then how you can use that breaking to work in your favor. And so what we're gonna do to do that is just kind of click around. So obviously the first thing you see here is you can view details on a product. You can go to your account, which is interesting. Anything that surrounds like a login or an elevation of privileges, you're going to want to focus on, figure out how it works, and then find any potential flaws. So let's do a test login here, right? Did they give us credentials? Sometimes they give you credentials. No, just told us we need admin to delete Carlos. Okay. So yeah, let's do a test login. Test and test. Login. We don't want to save that. So obviously invalid username and password, that's fine. So we go down here to the post request where we sent the data, and you can see username and password right there. Now, a really cool feature of Burp, and we're kind of not focusing on the right area because we're not able to make any requests. Although, yeah, I'm not seeing anything off the top of my head. Let's look at what else we have before I get too off topic. But you get kind of an idea of how it works. So, let's see here. So we can view. Oh, we can check stock. Okay. Let's check the stock of their London inventory. That's 42 units. Okay. So that's interesting. So let's look back into that actual request and see how it worked. So it made a post request in this slash product slash stock, and then it sends out an API. Product stock check, product ID store. So what it seems like it's doing is sending this URL to be requested. So like the server makes a request to this URL. Let's see if we can encode this. Burp is also really cool in that I think we have to send it to repeater first. But Burp is really cool in that you can change the encoding. URL decode. There we go. And you can see now it's just a standard URL that it's sending to the backend, and that the backend is making a request for. So what happens then if we change this to something like, slash admin slash delete slash user equals Carlos or something like that, right? That's ultimately what we're going to be trying to do here, but we don't know the proper format for the delete user request. So we need to find some way to do that. One way that we could do that, if there's a way to like register a new account, that could be really handy. Sometimes you kind of just have to guess it though. Does anyone have any Wiener Peter? Okay, that is the one they typically provide. I didn't see that in the logs here. Not the logs, but the lab. Okay, that would definitely be useful. Whoops, that's the wrong window. Is it IE? Oh yeah, it is. No, it's not working. Yeah, typically, Bad Wolf, typically they'll say it in here. They'll be like log in with the credentials, Wiener Peter, and then um, yeah, then you can get signed in. So we need to find some way then to find go to my account. Hmm. Okay, good night, Sir Haxlot. So, can anyone think of a way that we can find that we can delete the Carlos user? And actually, before we move on here, is anybody view the admin page? Are you thinking it should just be like slash admin? Oh, yes. Thank you, Bad Wolf. Sorry, you can tell how much I prepared. This was, like I said earlier, this is kind of impromptu. But yes, you're absolutely right. So, yes. So what Bad Wolf is saying is because the request is being made from the server, it's going to have elevated permissions. So let's see if it can access the admin page. Or in fact, well, yeah, let's hit that and see what it goes. And then missing parameter. Interesting. Hmm. Okay. So the missing parameter, then we need to add something in there, like a product ID or something like that. Oh, yes, I sure did. Yep. But it needs the product ID too, still, right? It's a lot harder trying to do this on the fly and explain it than I expected. Okay, let's find out. I mean, even then, if we provide a parameter it doesn't use, it's not going to cause an issue. So let's just throw admin. But take that slash out of there. Okay. Yeah, from what I remember, there was a definite request to be made. Like there was a way to find like a user creation URL or something that you can manipulate to actually delete the user. That's what I was thinking, that it should be loopback for an SSRF. Okay. There we go. Okay, and so now we're not getting the error back. Cannot connect to external stock check servers. Okay, so it is still getting an error. Yeah, and so if you were doing an actual web penetration test, you would already like have a script written or something like that that would automatically cycle through the different ports, which is a good way to do like internal port scanning and to figure out sort of what you're actually looking at on the back end. But yeah, let's take that port 8080 out of there and see if we can use the default HTTP port 80. Yeah, here we go. We have an actual admin panel where we can see the request here that we need to make for the user Carlos. I was going to change that, but I actually have it right here. And from there, let's just replace the admin because we already have the slash. If we hit send, okay, we got a 302 found, and let's look back at the browser. Refresh. Huh, it didn't actually delete it. Did it? Hmm. Okay. Well, let's follow the redirection and see. It says admin interface only available if logged in as administrator or if requested from loopback. Oh, okay. So I then would have to, let's try localhost. I think localhost, you don't wind up going through the network interface. And let's follow the redirection. And the interface on logged in as an administrator or if available from loopback. Hmm. Jay Forster, I like your idea of trying different attacks, different approaches to tackle a problem, but we're specifically focusing on a SSRF lab. I think the product ID is the issue. Okay. I don't, from the error message, it sounds like it's something to do with the interface that it's actually using or the way that it's making the call. Because it's super weird that you would be able to actually access the admin panel, but then not to make a request. It's saying the admin interface is only available. Hmm. Did I do that? Yep, sure enough. I still don't think that's the error message, but we'll see here. And let's follow that redirect. Yeah, available for logged in as administrator. Hmm. Does anyone have any other ideas, or should we go to the solution? Oh, yeah, sure, Jay Forrester. Yeah, so what's happening here is that when we started, we went to one of these products. I think we actually did go to the web spray. This is not important what the product is. The important thing is that they have this check stock feature where you can select their different warehouses and then check what stock is available there. And if we go back into Burp and into the actual request that it made, we can see that it sends along a web URL for the server to make a request to get the data that it's looking for like how many of that item are in stock. And so when it makes that request, it just gets a number back, and whatever it gets back, it puts on the screen. So what we're doing is manipulating that, and we're making the server equal should be percent. Oh yeah, I did forget to URL encode. That could definitely do it. Okay, so I'll do that just as soon as I'm finished explaining here. So yeah, so we're getting the server to make requests on our behalf, or we're making requests as the server. So you can think of it essentially like how at work you get told all the time, don't click in links in emails and stuff like that. So we're doing the same thing. We're clicking on links as the server. And so that can give us all sorts of interesting things that we can do from remote code execution to file inclusion to um, internal port analysis and scanning. And it gives you access to the network as the server. So does that kind of clear it up, Jay Forrester? Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So the equal should be percent sign 3D. Yeah, and I should URL encode. You're absolutely right. Go ahead and do that. And in Burp, you can do Control and U to automatically URL encode, and then Control Shift and U changes it back. And then Control U is URL encoded. And the URL encoding, it allows the server to understand what is like part of a string. Like if you start putting in, colons and ampersands and stuff like that, it's going to think it's a new parameter. So if it's URL encoded, it knows that that is just one parameter and not the start of a new one. So let's go ahead and send that on and see if that actually took care of the issue. I believe it might. Okay, we've got it 302 found. And let's scroll down. Admin interface only available if logged in as administrator or if requested from loopback. Okay, so we're still getting the same error. How do we feel about looking at the solution? Because they do give a solution. Okay, so we're looking at, you're suggesting just do the URL only. So you're saying take off the store ID parameter. Let's try it. Oh, we got a URL found. Still getting the same error, which is interesting. Okay, so we're poking around more. No problem. So essentially, what this is saying, what the error message is saying, is that when we are making the request to go to the admin panel, we're making the request correctly, as far as we can tell. And then it's saying, no, you can't do it because you're not accessing it from localhost or from the loopback interface, which is the 127.0.0.1 or localhost. And but it's weird because the request that we're actually making, let's see, it's localhost. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Let's try that. Yeah. Interface only available if logged in as administrator. No, unfortunately, it's a pretty standard format for URL encoding. I mean, there is some variations on how you can do it. So percent sign typically indicates the start of a URL encoded character. Let me go back here. So we can see if I Control Shift U, we get the equal sign. And then if I Control U to encode it, we get percent sign 3D. So a URL encoded character is typically going to be a percent sign and then two characters after that. So yeah, like percent sign 3D, like Bad Wolf said. Yeah, it's super weird. With the URL encoding, we haven't tried the other. Let's try that. Still. I'm trying to think of anything else. It's entirely possible too. Let's not eliminate the possibility there's something going on their end. It's really unlikely, but it is possible. Question mark could be. That would still be odd though, because the issue that it seems to be having is how we're accessing it, like through the host name. But yeah, let's give that a shot. Huh. Okay, yeah, I'll try going back to just admin. Oh, now it's saying we solved the lab. Okay, um, that's really weird. So we did actually. That's kind of the funny thing. Remember earlier when I said we're trying to see how the site works and then figure out how to break it and make that work for us? Well, when you're breaking things, sometimes they don't always work like you would expect. So you can still get errors, but then it'll work completely correct. So that's unfortunately it's just life when you're hacking things. Uh, okay, so who's ready to move on to the next one? Does anyone have any questions, or does anybody does anyone feel stuck or anything like that? Yeah, that's okay, Kryptonite. I did too. Um, it's like I said, that unfortunately sometimes it happens. 'Cause we were getting an error for every request, so I don't know what exactly changed it. But if we go back here, see we have a pop up. So who knows when that happened? We should have been checking more frequently. But I was trying to get that error to go away. So in that case, then let's go ahead and run through it. There's another basic lab, or let's run through the solution to see what we should have done. So step one, you go to /admin to observe that you can't directly access the admin page. That would come up in an actual web app penetration test. That would come up during enumeration. You would already have that in your notes. In this case, we kind of already knew what we were looking for, and yeah, you're not going to kind of bust out a directory brute force to find something like this. That's a little over the top. But in that case, for step number one, a real penetration test, you would have done some enumeration and known that that admin panel was there and known what error message or what error code you get when you access it. But then from there, we went to check stock. We found that check stock function in there, and we changed the URL in the stock API to admin. Thank you. Thank you, Bad Wolf. That was your idea. And then from there, we found the URL that we should have used and submitted through the stock API parameter to deliver the attack. So yeah, that matches up what we were doing. We just had that weird hang up. Okay. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Go back to SSRF, review all SSRF labs. Come on. And we're going to do another basic SSRF because we're just trying to get our foundations here. In this lab, we're going to use the stock check functionality just like we did previously. Did they tell us that on the last one? And I missed it. I've had a long day. If they didn't, even better. But yes, we're going to use the stock check functionality just like we did last time. And then we're going to scan the internal network like we've done previously. So this one is, I already know it's going to be kind of a pain because I don't have the professional burp. You can actually accomplish this through like a Python script or something like that. Unfortunately, the professional burp is rate limited, but I'll show you how to do it. We just may not get all the way through because it's going to take forever. But this one, we're going to use Intruder, the Intruder feature of Burp Suite. So we already know that we're going to use that check stock function, and we're going to go here and check the stock. So let's go look at that request. Okay, and that looks pretty much the same as what we had, but now instead of having a domain name like it did before, we have an IP address. So let's send that over to, we're going to do Intruder this time. Oops, wrong tab. Okay, and then from here, what we can do is find, what did they want us to scan? 192.168.0 and then 0 through 255. Great. Yeah, and then from there, I'm trying to think of the best way to do it. Normally, I would generate like a list from 0 to 2, which I think we can do. Just seek 0. Is it space 255? Yeah. And we can just copy those. Normally, I would output this into a file. I don't know if I necessarily want my file structure exposed to the internet. But what we can do from here is go back into burp and we're right here. That last digit is what we're trying to brute force. So we're going to highlight it and then we're going to click add. And when it's highlighted with this green here, what it's going to do, the values that we give it, that list of numbers that I just gave or just generated, it's going to go through one by one and put those in there and try a request and then come back and tell us what we get. So from that point, actually, let's just take everything from there and not, whoops, deleted too much. Just delete everything and then remark it because we don't know if it's going to get a, did it say specify a port? Yeah, on port 88, so we should have left that in there. That's okay. So let's add that last digit back. So it'll select that and put the port in there. And URL encode it with Control U. That way we don't have issues. Okay, and so we've got that all set up, and now we need to actually give it the payload and tell it what it's doing. Which is that feature? Then there should be a tab for it. Oh, they moved it. Actually, Burp set an update. That used to be in a separate window. Okay, so I'm gonna do paste. And so now we have that list from 0 to 255, which is the only possibilities that the last octet of the IP address can hold. And now if we hit start attack, okay, we'll start seeing when that last octet was 6, we got a 500 server error. 2, we got a 400. So we can tell at 192 or yeah, 192.168.0.2 there's a server. At 0 there's a server. We're getting, valid responses. And so from here we can kind of do a port scan. And let's see what they actually wanted us to look for. For an admin interface on port 8080. Okay. So from here, yeah, we can go to the responses for each one. And here's where I said that we may not actually wind up doing this because we're looking for like a 200. Well, there's a 404. We could try 8 and then /admin. Let's try that. Actually, let's restart this because that'll actually tell us. Let's do /admin. Is anybody stuck? Does anybody have any questions, or do we kind of get where we're going, what we're trying to do? You say 9 was 200? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little behind here. So it's 8. There we go. Yeah, cool. So let's look at the response. And it looks like, yeah, sure enough, we have an admin. And so we're going to do kind of the same thing here because we know what URL we're going to use. And this time it gives us the full one. So let's copy that. And we're going to delete this old one here. Or actually, let's send this. We're going to right click on it, send it to repeater because we're only making one request. And that's what repeater is really good for. And that's this tool here is the Burp Suite repeater. Where if I can highlight, there we go. Okay, I love when computers don't want to cooperate. And we'll paste in that new URL. And let's highlight it again. I'm just using Control Shift and the arrow keys, which I find to be a lot more fast. And then URL encode it, send it along, and that should solve it. Follow redirection. Let's follow another redirection. That's a lot of redirections. What's happening? Okay, there we go. We solved the lab. Does anyone have any questions on how that happened, or like any questions at all about anything that I just went over? Yeah, exactly, Jay Forrester. And it's using your access as the server is how I like to think about it. You're kind of impersonating yourself as the server or using the server um, to sort of brute force it and yeah, just check one by one and see what is on what port. Um, okay, great. So yeah, let's looks like we have time for at least one more. So let's go to the next one. Which it looks like I actually, when I went through the SSRF, it looks like I didn't get that far, so this will be a first for me as well. Okay, it's a practitioner one, which I think it's only the like super high level ones that aren't free. I know there are some paid ones, I believe. I'm glad you're learning a lot, Kryptonite. No problem. Okay, so let's see what it's telling us about this lab before we start it. Close out the other tabs. Okay, it says this site uses analytics software which fetches the URL specified in the refer header when a product page is loaded. Okay, gotcha. So we're going to look into URL specified in the refer header. That's interesting. Okay. And that's one of the things that I really like. I can't do this one without Pro. Gotcha. Okay. Was that the practitioner ones? I forget what the like labels are. Oh, Burp Collaborator. Yep, I see that. So Collaborator is a paid feature. I don't have access to it, unfortunately. I do want to get like a paid paid burp, like the Burp Pro, because you actually need that to do their certification, the BSCP, which is like a super high level, in my opinion at least, super high level web exploitation certification. But yeah, you have to have Burp Pro for it, which is kind of, I don't like it, but what are you gonna do? Okay, so in that case, then let's go back to the SSRF lab, see if we can do any of the other ones. If not, we'll pick out a new topic. Okay, this is going to be an interesting one. So we have to solve the lab by checking the stock check. So it's going to be the same vulnerable feature to access the admin interface and delete Carlos. So we're doing the same thing effectively, but they have two anti-SSRF defenses we need to bypass. So let's check out, see what they have in place, and see what we can do to bypass it. Almighty push, you can use the free trial of Pro for the exam, but you can only do that once. Yeah, and exactly, Kryptonite, you can't really practice either. Yeah. Okay, so we've got this pulled up, and we still have Burp Suite running in the background there. Why do I have two windows? Oh, we can close the intruder. That's fun. Discard. Okay, so we still have Burp open and doing its thing. Let's go back to the actual lab and see what we have going on when we try to check the stock. Okay, so if we go analyze that traffic, all right. So it looks pretty much the same so far. Let's send it to repeater and see what happens if we try to change this to like H. Okay, so the external stock check was blocked for security reasons. Can anyone think of a potential reason that it would have been blocked for, or what we can do to avoid a block? And now, what I'm thinking is, it's kind of interesting that you were able to. Oh yeah, I did forget to encode. Thank you. I do that all the time. I need to stop it. Oh, the highlighting. Also, is that a colon or a semicolon? Can't tell on my monitor. There we go. And control U to encode it. And let's send that again. Yeah, so we still get the same thing. So it is able to make a successful request out to do the actual legitimate stock check. Oh, to avoid. Okay, gotcha. Yes. So double encode. So what Bad Wolf is saying is that we can encode multiple times, and a lot of web servers will actually just continually decode it, and so you can bypass a filter, but it will not like break things. It'll still be successful. So yeah, let's try to encode this a second time and then send that through. And it's still blocking it. So it's interesting to me that it's able to successfully make out the request to like legitimately check the stock. And so that tells me that what it's looking at here is like the local host, which yeah, that's I'm about to look at that. When you automatically URL encode Burp Suite in or sorry, encode text in Burp Suite, it kind of only does the important characters that could go into a like a URL. So let's undo this, and then there's another way to do it. Oops, that's I re-encoded it. There we go. And one more time. There. So that way we can type in it. And go here, right click, and then go down to encode, wherever that went, or convert selection, sorry, URL. URL encode all characters. And let's send that through and see what it does. Okay, and so it's still detecting that it's making a check for the local the local host. So let's go back to the original parameter or the original URL that it was using. and see what it has there. Of course, it's not going to let me do that way. Do we have another tab with it? No. Okay. Send that back to repeater. And let's look here and see if we can think of anything else that we could do to manipulate this to send it through. Um, hmm. So base64 isn't going to work because the server has to be able to recognize what to do with the text, and so it's expecting it to be in this URL encoded format versus a base64 encoding. Let's see if I can convert selection. Yeah, base64. Where's base64 URL? Oh, that's base64 and then URL encodes. So yeah, then base64 looks like that, and so the server doesn't really know what to do with a base64 encoded string. You're thinking Unicode. So that's a good point. Yeah, what environment are we dealing with? What like what web server are they working with? Let's see if we can figure that out. Which would usually we would be able to find that like in the headers. It doesn't seem like it's saying that. Typically with the PortSwigger academies, that's not super important. Like it's not going to be specific to a specific like vendor or web server. But that is an excellent thought though. And usually if it is an important thing, they'll kind of like put it out there for you to see. Uh, so Bad Wolf is saying Unicode maybe you could also try 127.1 the decimal version. Interesting. So I don't think IPv6 is gonna do it. But yeah, ultimately I think they are trying to do some sort of like character encoding. Did we try localhost? Want some automation at it? What do you think of Masood? So I don't brute for parameters. Um, Well, so we're not trying to figure out the parameters, right? We're trying to figure out what they've put in place to prevent us from just requesting or making a request to localhost. Because we're able to make requests out, but not in, and so we need to figure out a way around that. Um, One thing that I can, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. There's a website, it's like FBI.me or something like that, and it redirects to localhost. It redirects to 127.0.0. And so that might be, well, not in this case. I would be surprised if PortSwigger doesn't have it firewalled, where you can't actually access, like for security purposes, from Burp Suite or from PortSwigger rather, that you can't use their machines as like a VPN or a proxy. So I would be surprised if you can like make connections out to websites. Um, I don't think that's gonna work, unfortunately. So what happens if we just keep the rest of the URL the same and change this to localhost? Oh, well, we're not in repeater. So in burp, if you're confused about why the typing didn't work there, um, only in like repeater in proxy you can't actually make changes to the packets when you like resend them or anything like that. So you have to send it to repeater or intruder or something like that if you're going to make modifications. But let's try changing this to localhost and to see what happens. External stock checked. Okay. Hmm. Or when you say dropping the zero, J Forster, which zero do you mean? Oh, with 127.1. I don't think IP addresses work like that. Or I know IPv6 you can do that. Just do like a double colon and like if there's a string of zeros. Although we did get a positive result here. Could not connect to external stock check service. Okay. So that's an actual like connection error. So that gives us another data point to work with, in that we know that if there is a an actual connection attempt made and it gets an error, then we get could not connect to external stock check. Versus if you hit one of their filters, then you get a error saying that. And so it's really important when you're doing stuff like this to pay attention to the error messages and see what they're really telling you. You can actually glean a lot of information from error messages. But in this case, though, yeah, it looks like that's not doing it. It wasn't able to. Well, in effect, we did bypass the filter, but it's because it wasn't going anywhere successful. Let's double check that. I thought they had told us port 8080. No, just at localhost. Okay, interesting. Let's try that. Aha. Now we're getting not found. Okay, so that's good. We're still on right dot one. There we go. Let's try this again. Okay, so still blocked for security reasons. Let's try. And it's still blocked for security reasons. Interesting. Encode the IP address. We most definitely can. Yeah, let's give that a shot. Also, let's go back to trying to access admin. And let's, yeah, try encoding the URL or the IP. Hmm. Okay. So it's interesting. So that does tell us that it is decoding the whole URL because it's still picking up that it's hitting a filter. So that does tell us some more, but I don't think that this is the way to proceed. Unfortunately, here in just a few moments, I was only planning on doing an hour, so here in a few moments we'll pull up um, the solution and see what it actually is, and I'm probably gonna kick myself because it's something that I should have thought of. But when you say restate the question or the scenario, okay, sure, yeah. So what is happening is we're exploiting the same bug that we found in the previous labs that we've done, and we're trying to access the admin panel just like we have previously, where we got that URL to delete the Carlos user. Unfortunately, in this case, they told us in the lab that there has been two weak security measures put in place to prevent this attack from being successful. And so we need to figure out what security measures were put into place and what we can do to get around them. So that's the scenario we're working on. Is we're trying to do some analysis of what's going on in the back end to try to figure out how we can actually make this attack work. So we've found a vulnerability. We need to develop an exploit. Yep. You're saying to try non-encoded? Oh, you're saying to try the admin. So the interesting thing here, we can tell if we go back to just using 127.0.0.1, we hit send, we're still getting that message. So we can tell that it's detecting on the actual internal check for 127.0.0.1 um or localhost also triggers it. So we can kind of tell the O's. Just do dots. Okay, I can try it. Yeah, invalid host name, which is interesting because again, that's a whole different error. That's telling us a different thing that we again bypassed the check. Um, yeah, so we bypassed the check. So it's specifically alerting on 127.0.0.1 or localhost. Try admin. Bad Wolf, are you saying to just try non-encoded? I can definitely do that. Seems a little obvious. Expanded your thing. Oh yeah, Discord does all kinds of weird stuff when you try to like do URL stuff. Oh, that's really interesting. It put the zeros in there. Okay. Huh. You're saying dot one slash admin. Lock for security reasons. Okay, interesting that that hit. Hmm. And encode it. Okay. If this doesn't work, I'm just due to time reasons, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the solution and we'll see what it was and we'll walk through it and see how it works. Encode all characters, just give it its best shot because we know it's decoding the whole URL. Yeah, unfortunately, that's still hitting it. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and pull up the solution and see what it does. Is everybody ready? Okay. Masood, I'm not sure what you mean by gopher. I'm not familiar with that tool. Oops. Okay. But if you want to put a link in there, I will definitely check it out. I always love, finding out new tools that I can use and adding them to my arsenal and toolbox. But I'm just not familiar with Gopher. So the solution here, we, go to the check stock, which we did, obviously. Change the URL to an observe it requested block. We did that. Bypass the block by changing it to .1. Oh, that's really weird because we definitely did that. Yeah, you did call it. Okay. Huh. Well, let's give and obfuscate the A by. Okay, I should have read the whole thing. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, sure enough, you were close. But yeah, good thinking though, Jay Forster. You were definitely on the right track. So you guys kind of get filter evasion, which is really what was going on here, which is a tactic that can apply to really any web attack. 'Cause filter evasion is gonna, yeah, there you go. Yeah, payloads, all the things, is great for stuff like this, for different, creative payloads that you can use for different attacks. Go for us. Generates Gopher link for exploiting SSRF. So the reason that Gopher wouldn't have been a good option here is that, or it would have been a good option. What's the best way to say this? So essentially, we would have needed to have figured out how the SSRF works, how to bypass that filter, and then we could have potentially used something like Gopherus. I'm not familiar with the tool, but it looks like it's an RCE that you can pull out of a SSRF, which can a lot of times be really specific to the server that you're using. And so I would expect them to say something like that in here. But that is definitely, if you can find a SSRF and get it working, which a really good way to test that is to send a packet, or like have like a server up on your computer and then send a request to yourself, and you'll be able to get, see that request and see that it's working. Oh, gotcha. Okay, it's like a bypass. Huh. Oh. Okay, it's okay. I gotcha. Yeah, I have heard of that before. I've never actually successfully used it, I don't think. Um, but yeah, that's definitely interesting. There are other things like that. Like PHP has these things called wrappers that you can also use to run PHP code from the URL. There's other stuff you can do from SSRF to get things like remote code execution. Again, with PHP, if you find a library that can run code, you can just put the path for that in the URL and then question mark, command equals or something. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen. But yeah, it's been fun. Does anyone else have any questions or anything like that before I get going? Okay, Masood. What do you have? Oh, yep. Sorry. Uh, Jay Forrester, I see you asked a question now. I'll get to that in just one second. Masood, I'm actually right now I'm an analyst, so I'm on the blue team in my professional job. There is some talk of me getting over to the red team and doing offensive stuff, which is definitely my focus anyway, getting into cybersecurity. Um, and web stuff is just the most ubiquitous. Like that's, most companies have a website that is facing the public. And so if you get good at web stuff, then that's kind of like something that can apply to every client. And so if you're really, really good at web stuff, you're really well desired, or, you're going to have a lot easier time getting into the industry. And then you can kind of specialize on hardware hacking or, whatever you want to do from there. Great, Jay Forrester. I'm glad you learned a lot. Let me see what your question was here. How would I deal with this vuln and how to prevent it? So the first thing would be that any sort of URL generation or anything like that should happen on the back end. and you should never trust user input like that. The second thing is that you should definitely have firewall rules in place to where that would be tough preventing like local host access from that level because it wouldn't really cross a firewall. But you should have rules in place at least to prevent unauthorized network connections as sort of a last resort. And then you can also have like web application firewalls which can detect and prevent the attack. And yeah, there's a myriad of different solutions, but the biggest thing is that the user shouldn't have access to the API calls that the server is making, and you shouldn't be able to modify them. Okay, Masood, what's the key for red teamers to evade your blue teaming protocols if you had to pick one thing? Um, yeah, so for me as an analyst, if my job really boils down to, and I think I'm kind of in a specific situation with the structure of my company and our relationship with our clients. But my job as an analyst is to kind of determine if something is safe and it just looks weird and potentially bad, or if something like is really bad and needs to be checked out. And so if something looks completely normal, if you do a good job of making your activities look completely normal, then that's not going to set off any alarms. Or if you set off actual alarms, someone's going to look at it and go, no, that seems fine, and send it along. So that if you're really trying to evade detection, then you're going to want to, yeah, observe your environment, figure out how things are supposed to look, figure out naming conventions for admins, stuff like that, and then don't do anything abnormal. Yeah, Masood, that's if you're familiar with Kali or Backtracks, no, I think they're all just Kali now. Either way, their slogan, the quieter you are, the more you can hear. Um, a really popular tactic when you've say breached a network, particularly like a corporate network, is to run something like Responder or something where you're going to capture network traffic, because you get all sorts of things like broadcast packets. Like computers will be like, hey, what's the IP address for this server? And then somebody will send it back. And you can observe that traffic and you can kind of get a map just by listening of what the map of what the network looks like, what the users are, stuff like that, just by intercepting traffic. Yeah, and that's definitely hard to do the noiseless enumeration. It's hard to practice on your own because you're not in an actual like a corporate environment and you don't have any pressure. Like no one's trying to catch you when you're doing a hack the box machine, and so it's a lot harder to practice being sneaky. I don't have a solution for that yet, other than to like get into the profession and maybe your company will have a lab or I don't know. I'm not there yet. So as far as sim tools, our company uses Sumo. I'm not for professional reasons. I'm not going to say what company, but they use Sumo primarily. Sumo Logic, which is really good, has a lot of really good features. One of our clients uses Datadog, which I had never heard of before doing this job, but is actually really user friendly, and I really like it. Okay, yeah, you might want to change that. Yeah, Splunk is good too. If you do hack the box right, yeah, that's a big downside. It's the cost for Splunk. Hack the box has a lot of modules regarding Splunk. So if you do the hack the box SOC analyst path from Hack the Box Academy, they have some really good classes or modules on Splunk. Yeah, Jay Forcer, that's kind of the that's a lot of people's challenges. So you're in good company there. Okay, Bad Wolf, I've got you. Yeah, I've been available to do that recently. I'm gonna do that once I get off here in a couple minutes. I'm gonna get everybody added and just approve all the requests. Which actually now is about as good a time as ever. I'm gonna go ahead and back out of here. It's been fun. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. You have a good night.
I'm muted. So, Bad Wolf, if your video worked, could you let me know and then find a way to share it with me? Because I'd love to get it posted for people who missed the workshop. Oh, sorry, Jay Forrester. Each person picks their own time, unfortunately. So it depends on their time zone, on what time they end up doing it. All right. I'm going to close out the stage. Thanks for coming, everybody. Well, I'll wait and see what Bad Wolf is saying.
In place ostensibly for more diversity, for equity and inclusion, and I think what we're seeing.
Oh, hey, no problem. I didn't do anything except mess up the recording. All right, I'll see y'all. Have a good night.